All right, we got head coach Kenny Bundy here. Kenny, just to kick it off, our preparation's gone this week, coming off a high-scoring affair win at the Monarchs, and then looking at a quick turnaround as well.
Yeah, we gave the guys a couple of days off, and then we're refocused on what we need to do over the next week. It's a 3 game week, which is not typical in our league, but I think that's great because at this point in the season, finding a rhythm heading into that last playoff push is really important.
We'll open up the questions, people on the Zoom. Joe, go ahead. Joey.
Hey, Kenny.
Hey, Mike.
With 3 games coming up this week, should we expect a lot of rotation in these games?
Well, let's take a step back and look at how positive it is for the club right now with the first team advancing in Leagues Cup, the Open Cup, and then their push for the playoffs in the MLS. So I think rotation is really important. We're going to take it game by game. Obviously, there's a lot that plays into where every player is going to be. But yeah, our plan would be making sure that we're putting together squads that are not only as fresh as possible, but that can give us the best opportunity to get those results.
Isaiah Reed has had a lot of success coming off the bench lately. Where do you see his best position in the starting lineup going forward?
Right now, it's about being on the field, to be honest. And I think Isaiah, unfortunately, has had a couple injuries this season. So, we get a glimpse of him in Dallas, and then he re-aggravates an injury. And each one of those injuries has left him out for a significant amount of time. So it's just great to have him healthy. We saw in the last game coming on as the number 9, he puts himself in unbelievable positions, and his ability to finish has been fantastic. His energy up front, even the way that he presses and defends. And I think I've talked about this before, but the leadership that he brings as well, coming from college, winning a national championship, being the captain there, it helps him being around the group in the locker room, either coming off the bench or starting the game. But he can positionally play right now for us, and where we think he's the most effective is either out wide or as that number 9.
And with Houston and Kansas City, there's always been a bit of a rivalry between these teams with the senior teams. How does that translate to the second teams?
Yeah, they're different because I think a lot of times the rivalries that the first teams have, it kind of translates into the way people see the second teams. And we probably have a bit bigger rivalry with Seattle than the first team does. So I think for us, Benny, Ike, Kansas, they've done an excellent job this year. Obviously, what they've done from last year to this year has been really impressive. And I think that, for us, it's a difficult team. They sit 6 points ahead of us. They were able to get a really good result in Colorado. The way that they play, it can be frustrating for teams at times because of the way that they keep the ball. But every game right now is considered a playoff game. Every game has really important points, especially when we're at home. So, we look at this next run, and we look at some of these games. Every team we play now is a team that we need to get points against.
And with you guys playing on the same day as the first team on Sunday, how do you find that balance of having players ready for the second team? Because you say every game is a playoff game, but there are also been a lot of those guys on the bench for the first team in these Leagues Cup games. How do you find the best balance for that?
Yeah, the first team plays on Monday, so it's a little bit of a reprieve from a standpoint of having to go. I mean, to be honest, if we had played on the same day, which originally was the thought, more of a concern for me is obviously, how does the club able to watch both games? There was a little bit of a time span, but now with it being on Monday, I think it'll be interesting because those guys that have been on the bench, the Leagues Cup is allowed a 23-man roster. Obviously, the substitutions haven't changed, so player 19 to 23 is not utilized. But we'll manage it the way we can. And obviously, for us and the staffs, we meet every day, and we just had a 45-minute meeting about how we want to work through with these guys going back and forth. But it's just another benefit of the connection that we have with the first team.
Right. Thanks so much, Kenny. Good luck.
Thank you.
George, go ahead. Maybe.
Hey, Coach, how's it going?
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good, good. Touching up on the 3 games in a week. Every game, like you said, well, first of all, game by game, day by day, but every game is a playoff push, correct? You're right above the line with 29 points. Um, this, like you said, SKC 35 points, 6 points ahead of you. You could jump up some spots if some teams don't do well. But what does it mean to you and the team after a big win like last game?
Yeah, it's such a coaching answer to say we focus one game at a time. It is, but human nature, you obviously, and I'm talking more from the players and the staff as human beings. You always look at the what ifs and okay, here's where this is important, but we have to refocus the group and we have to make sure that they understand what we can control right now is not what anyone else does. It's how we perform against Kansas. And number one, we're home. Number two, we're coming off of 3 games where I think, we've responded to that little spell where we weren't getting points. But on top of that, and the most important thing is I think we've been playing much better. Yes, last week I said we wanted to score first and we want to score multiple goals. So we got half of that right. We didn't score first, but we scored 5 goals. I think this week's message for this game is we want to frustrate them in everything that we do. So if I give a little bit more of an example, and the weekly message is to frustrate them, it's relentless pressure, not only from a defending side. So that might mean our high pressing, that might mean when we get pushed back into a block because they're a very good team and they can play. How are we frustrating them? And we want to put them under pressure and make them frustrated when we have the ball. 4 of the 5 goals you could consider transition goals for us last weekend, which I always say is a strong suit of ours. But now how can we, with the ball, put more pressure on them to have to sit deeper to potentially only be able to transition against us? This Kansas game is massive. It's huge, and it's nice that we were able to give the guys a little bit of time. We don't get built-in breaks throughout the year. So to be able to play on a Friday to be able to play on a Friday and then give them a couple days to just relax and rejuvenate, it's helped this week. The energy of the group, the fact that the guys are training the way they are is really exciting about what we need to do on Sunday.
And then I've got 2 more questions for you. Any update on Sebas Rodriguez?
Yeah, he's got a ridiculous mask on right now. No, it's funny because obviously when you have an injury like he has, and it's the 2nd broken nose in a year, there's a lot that you have to make sure you manage. So we were able to get him in a mask. We were able to make it comfortable, and he will not have to use that mask after Sunday. So Sunday's his last day with the mask. But that being said, he's been in first team training all week, helping them prepare for what they have. He's been excellent there. Obviously it's great when you have him and you have Charles who can play that position. And he'll be a big part of this 3-game stretch that we have. But yeah, he's available. He just has one of the most uncomfortable looking masks I've ever seen. So
Correct. And then lastly, talk to us a bit about another young gun, Tate Lampman. He had the All-Star break, although that was a bit ago. But for him to consecutively start, what does that mean to you as a coach? Maybe do you see are you a father figure to them at times? Kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, father figure. Yeah, it's funny when you're a coach and you reach an age where all of the guys that you coach, even the stint that I had with the first team, they could be your kids. I think that you hit the nail on the head. We have to be positive male figures in their life. right? And a lot of that has to do with on the field, but I think the most important thing is from a human side, being there to help them through the emotions that they're going through. I can remember myself at 16 years old, briefly, barely, but I can't fathom what they're going through because that didn't exist back then. It wasn't something that people were dealing with. And, our job is to not only improve them as players, but probably more importantly, improve them as men because they're growing up fast and they're experiencing things that there's not a lot of people in our positions that have experienced that. And so you have to guide them through every day almost and make sure you understand as much as you can what they're going through. But part of that also is understanding their families and knowing their families and knowing how important being there for their families when they have questions is. And I think that's what's really excited me about Zeke, Sebastian, and Tate is the relationship that we have with their family. The relationship that my family has, to see their parents at games and be able to sit with them and, they have a closer connection with me. You obviously have Dan and his wife and his kids are there. My girlfriend and her kids are there. And there's a bond that is created because for a lot of these kids, they are still kids. So, it's really important that the human side is there. Now, as far as Tate from a playing standpoint, he's earned playing. I've said this before. We are not going to play academy kids or young players just to say that we do it. They are going to earn their opportunity, and they're going to have to make sure that they are continually winning that opportunity week to week. And Tate has won that. And I think I always revert back to maybe what we've talked about prior. At the beginning of the year, we didn't know how it was going to play out because we knew for a fact we were not going to be the staff that just said, "Oh, you're young, and it's a nice tweet, it's a nice Instagram video. We're going to put you in. You have to earn it." And these guys have stepped up and they've actually earned these spots, and I couldn't be more proud. Now with Tate, the best thing that's happening to Tate right now is every game he's improving on potentially the mistakes that he made prior games, and he's making new mistakes. And that's where you learn. I don't think if it's easy or if, we're not highlighting the improvements, he's getting any better. So it's no different than some of these guys playing maybe an age true game and being okay. That's not good enough because they need to have the pressure on them that if they're playing age true games, under 17s games, then they need to be the best player on the field. They need to help their teammates. They need to use the experience that they've gotten from the second team to come down to the 17s and win games. Now that you've stepped up and you're winning games with the next pro team, how can we improve every game? And Tate, for instance, I thought 2 weeks ago, defensively, made a couple decisions that we can improve on. Really good with the ball. I thought last weekend, unbelievably defensively. He did a great job stepping into midfield. He was very hard to beat, and then maybe made a couple of mistakes on the ball. Again, those are the things that we need to improve on, and that's what video does. That's what individual conversations does. And if you want me to come full circle, that's what having a relationship with these kids does, is they realize that our job is to continually push them to improve. And once they embrace that and they realize that, the timeline speeds up much faster.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, buddy.
Juan, go ahead.
Hello, Kenny. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. So Papa Ndoye scored 3 goals in his last match, 4 goals in his last 2 games. Do you think his run of form will continue into Sunday?
Absolutely. I have all the faith in the world in Papa. And I think that, for me, playing in those positions is about rhythm. It's about belief. It's about confidence. You can coach tactics. You can coach technique. You can work on the mental side of things. You can work on the visualization, see where these opportunities are going to come from. But nothing sparks rhythm more than having a game or 2 games like Papa's had, where, he made all of the right decisions and he was rewarded by scoring the goals. The other bit is it's funny when they get in these rhythms and then the team feels that confidence. I think it flows through these guys. And, to watch even Papa train this week, he's not a guy that's going to take his foot off the gas and go, oh, okay, it's going to come easy. He knows how important keeping this rhythm is. And it's a great time of the year for him to have this. As a coach, you want these guys to have this for 28 games, but that's just not realistic. We know there's going to be ups and downs throughout the year, and it's a perfect time for him to have this.
So now we're going to talk about Brooklyn Reigns. He's been playing very well these past couple of games. You were talking about transition and how your team really feeds off of that. So how important has he been in that phase of the game? And again, do you expect him to keep going? And do you see him getting first minutes with the first team?
I can't answer that question. Obviously, that's something that's internal, and that's a game by game thing. But speaking about Brooklyn being with the second team, yeah, he's been excellent, and he brings energy, he brings quality, he brings a tenacity. He's a winner. I think Brooklyn performs really, really well when there's pressure or some sort of aggravation. If he feels that he's aggravated, it's funny. We were talking about Brooklyn, and there's all these things about professional athletes and how they would create conflict in their mind so that they would get a competitive edge over another player. And there's multiple stories about that where maybe something didn't happen between two guys, but they would create a story of something to get that. And I think harnessing that on Brooklyn has been one of the biggest challenges. How do we get him to play almost constructively angry in these games? Because when he does that and when it's constructive, he's one of the most dynamic guys on the field. Part of that too is he's doing that in training now. So I know with the first team, he's had a couple excellent days. He's really pushing his limits. But he's really, really key when he's on the field for us because of what he does to not only break up plays, but he's an outlet when we're in our attacking transition.
Okay, so final question. Obviously, last game you got 3 separate deficits removed. You guys played really well in the second half. How does that energy from coming back and winning that game feed into this game, especially against Sporting Kansas City when you're still in the race for a playoff spot?
Yeah, there's a lot of positives from the last game, but there's just as many improvements that we need to make. And obviously, the key for us is to look back at the 3 goals, look back at how those goals were created from Salt Lake, and make sure that we're improving on those moments, because a 5-0 game for us is a completely different than 5-3. Okay, sure, it's 3 points. And yes, we can look at all the positives and say, okay, that's great. We scored multiple goals. We got 3 points. But at the end of the day, our goal every week is to score multiple goals and keep clean sheets. And right now, we're not keeping enough clean sheets. How do we do that? So, yes, the momentum is in, and getting 3 points is always great because you can step back into the team the next week and you can push a little harder because the mentality of the group is we got 3 points, we got it done. So just as many positives, there's that many improvements. And our focus this week is, okay, we talked about wanting to score first last week. Well, every time we responded, we conceded a goal up until the 75th, 70th minute. For us, it's really important that this week we have what we had in the second half from the start of the game. And then can we put pressure on them by going up a goal, by being a bit more greedy in front of our goal and not conceding easy opportunities. And I think that it's been a good response from the boys because obviously it helps when you win a game. But they all see it as well. They want that clean sheet. And I want that to be as important to them as scoring 5 goals. I think their future as professional players, it's going to come down to, yes, you want to score multiple goals, but you've got to celebrate those clean sheets just as much as you do 3-0 and saying those 3 goals were great.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.